limiting to 2 minutes.
I hope I can keep mine to 2 minutes. It may actually,
If you have something longer, you can put it on.
okay, it's just a statement. I wanted to make a couple comments. Very good to see you, sir. On Tuesday, March 17th at 12:45, my pager sounded with a message of a male party in the Hockenham area woods complaining of severe chest pain. Gotta catch my breath. I was in my truck before the dispatch had ended. Before I left my driveway, police officer John Stewart was en route and passed my house. I went to the fire station where I met Brian Miner and we proceeded in Engine 2 towards Hockenham Trail. It was unclear where the party was, but firefighter Brent Walker had already determined it was not on the first trail when we reached the scene, so we proceeded to the intersection of Hockenham and Wendell Road. We met up with Orange paramedics at the time and believed from the position of Patrolman Stewart's cruiser that we were following his path into the woods. Dispatch stayed on the phone with the man and he continued to give us clues until his cell phone disconnected. Within 2 minutes, Officer Stewart had located him. EMT Miner and Orange paramedics reached him shortly after and treated him, including defibrillation, oxygen, and warming him with their coats. I had been given job of command, which meant communications and getting resources, manpower, equipment, and coordinating life flight requests. Firefighters and equipment from Warwick, Orange, Irving, Athol, Royalston, and DCR were requested. Our firefighters carried out blankets and more oxygen bottles. Orange brought a Stokes basket and we began moving the patient manually while a snowmobile and a tracked utility vehicle were en route. The snow was nearly 3 feet deep, the patient was an adult male, and they were a half-mile into the woods. It took about 20 people. This was labor-intensive and could not have been done without great mutual aid relationships. Multiple requests were made for a chopper, and finally one was granted. The effort to save someone's life in our town did not fall short due to a spectacular battle on the patient's behalf because he wanted to live, due to hard work from all the trained responders, and due to a few undeniable miracles. We have a neighbor we can celebrate instead of mourn. I thought the townspeople needed to know that emergencies do happen, and the response from public safety is incredible. There are many heroes that contributed to the successful outcome on March 17th. First should be Patrolman John Stewart, who truly deserves this town's recognition and respect for immediately taking actions to find, help stabilize, and transport our neighbor to safety and life-saving medical treatment. Officer Stewart's quick effort saved someone's life. A coordinated public safety effort between 911 dispatchers, police, fire, life flight, and hospital worked, and proved Stewart's determination was warranted. If the Select Board would, I ask that you write a letter of thanks and commendation to Officer John Stewart. Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody dropped the tray.
I would just like to say thanks again. We do have a wonderful public safety department. Our police and fire, we're a small town. I have personally experienced their services, and I can't say enough either about them. So, as far as I'm concerned, I will not vote for any cuts in their budgets. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I brought it up in the last meeting about cell service, and it was a miracle that he got cell service where he's at, because it was, I imagine he was on the top of that hill and it was close by. That's why I emphasized safety for people of Warwick, and I strongly suggest looking into the cell service and pursuing that.
We have been,
Okay.
but it's not easy. We've been pursuing it for, I don't know, a year at least, and we're not being too successful.
Is it because the carriers don't want to put it up there, or is it because we're asking too much
No,
rent for the thing?
it's because the carriers don't really think we're worth putting anything in for.
Okay, maybe it's worth their while to kick up some money for that,
Well,
for example.
yeah, that's quite possible. Yes, ma'am.
When the cell carriers were approached, was there a discussion regarding one-bar service for texting in case of emergency?
David, could you address that?
best prospect that we have are second and third tier carriers, because market forces clearly have meant that Verizon and AT&T and Sprint aren't interested in coming here. I long felt that part of the problem was that they place so much emphasis on drop calls, and that the lone tower, which was built in Warwick on speculation, does not provide continuous, seamless service, outside of the range of coverage. That may be part of it. We've been talking with a company called Coverage Co., who are deploying internet backhaul, so they're cans that fit on towers or on poles that are plugged into the internet instead of using typical technology. And that's being rolled out in Vermont right now with some success. The biggest barrier seems to be the radio spectrum, 1900, 1800 megahertz, belongs to certain carriers. So at one point, about a year ago, I called up Coverage Co. and said, we finally have our fiber backhaul at both towers, and we have money in the bank. We're ready to, we aren't even going to worry about monetizing this. We aren't even going to worry about making money on it. But for $25,000, we can get something up on both towers. And the answer was, good for you, that's great, but we can't do it because we don't own the radio spectrum. So that's the pickle. And the situation right now is that Sprint on the PCS and CDMA networks are the only ones that are willing to even play at all with Coverage Co. and their alternate solution. That's the route that we're going. It's not terribly promising. We've even looked at options such as creating the world's biggest Verizon or AT&T family plan. Recently, and I've been sort of hard driving on the subject, and recently the Broadband Committee made a decision that they really wanted to step back from the cell thing for a few months while the fiber to the home question gets settled. But I agree, and it is a miracle that Paul was able to get cell coverage for the first thing, and it is terrifically important. And the major wireline carriers, AT&T and Verizon in the United States, have petitioned the FCC to end the requirement that they provide wireline service. Well, we're in that 2% of the country that has no cell coverage, and it's regulation that dates from the days of natural monopolies, of doesn't make sense to have a bunch of telephone companies, so we give it to Bell Telephone, but in return for being granted the monopoly in the community, they have to serve everybody. Post office is in the same rate. That's, if you look down the road, it looks like that's all going to blow up. And it seems like the solution is going to have to be, the cell is going to have to replace it, or we're going to have 2% of the country without any communication.
Yeah, Tom Wyatt, Northfield Road. Madam Chairman, I wondered if we could have people introduce themselves, since we have a situation like a town meeting.
Okay.
Also, I wondered whether it would be helpful to have more volunteers to work on the cell phone issue in town. Just
Could I can't see how it hurt. It's an expansion of the charge or the domain that the Broadband Committee has. I think they're pretty closely allied, but Broadband Committee over the years hasn't so much agreed. So contact me if you're interested in figuring out how you can help move it. I have collected contacts for the place at AT&T where if you're trying, the department that tries to get on towers. Incidentally, we don't have an interest financial interest in either tower except as tenants. So I think it would be somewhat unprecedented to get cell service on a state-owned tower, but thanks to Mrs. Lemon calling the state years ago, we got our broadband equipment on there when the conventional wisdom was they won't let anybody else up there. Well, we're on it. The other tower is owned by American Tower, and they have a reputation for being a bit difficult, hard to deal with. But we've been doing business with them for 6 years, and I think just about anything's possible. Typically, though, a monthly rental for a cell carrier is around at minimum $1,000, and that kind of works against us in terms of the number of customers we have available sitting underneath the tower. And people driving through town, even when the tower is lit up, are gonna drive through areas with no coverage. When you come down over Barber Hill, it's gonna disappear, because it's just land between the top of that tower and points on Barber Hill. So it's a challenge. We met the challenge with Warwick Broadband for a non-economic deal by doing it ourselves. The path for that option for Warwick for cell isn't nearly so clear, because all the equipment works on proprietary owned radio spectrum. And most of our broadband equipment works on the same stuff as a baby monitor or your home Wi-Fi. And so we don't have issues of ownership of the radio layer that's being used.
Would there be interference with their use, in fact, if we used it? Or is it just a legal position that they take because they like to?
Well, the reason for, besides generating money, the reason for the FCC selling spectrum is that instead of a Wild West situation like Warwick Broadband operates in, we've had instances where somebody threw up gear in New Hampshire that messed with us, and we worked with them to teach them what they needed to know to operate correctly and all be in the same sandbox. That's the underlying reason. But I don't think there would, the equipment would be on their network. We would just be providing a point of access for that. And the offer we made them so far, they would have gotten satisfied customers. It wouldn't have cost them anything. We'd have been paying the internet bill. We'd have been paying for the equipment. We'd have been paying to install the equipment. We'd be paying to put electricity to the equipment. But they still said no.
And they said no because,
Out of the box.
I'm sorry?
It's out of the box. It's not the way it's done. If they want to be in a market, they come into a market, they negotiate with a cable carrier, they get their permits, they install it, they run their business. They don't want our business. That's why I say that a second or third tier company is our best bet, if they, which Warwick Broadband is for broadband. You might be able to, once you have 200 customers and a certain amount of cash flow and a certain amount of roaming that the second tier is doing, and the first tier company is paying the second tier company because all their customers are using the facilities in Warwick, they might change their tune. I see it as economic.
Well, what I'm wondering about is whether it's legal.
Absolutely. It's the rules of the game.
Well, the rules of the game weren't created for this situation, so it's probably legal.
I believe that when they buy radio spectrum in an area, there are attendant to that, they have to serve a certain percentage of the area, or they have paid good money for the spectrum and they have to, and somebody else gets to use it because they're not. But missing 2% of the country is within the bounds of what's acceptable,
Says who?
says the FCC.
Okay.
maybe the best thing going for us is their desire to abandon the copper wire to our plain old telephone lines. And in order for them to be allowed to do that, they'd have to come up with another way to get service.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to accept minutes of the last meeting?
We do. My pause was, I was wondering how it is that there are so many people here and nobody's speaking. Are you sure that none of you want to talk about anything? Here you are. It's your chance, you know.
Can I go back to the cell service thing? for a minute? We own a campground, Wagner. I spoke to the providers of the tower, and they me. Their issue was financially it was not justified to push or bring signal here for the number of people that were here. From an emergency standpoint, with the numbers at Laurel Lake and the numbers with us and the numbers of this town, they were open to suggestions of 1-bar 3G texting for emergencies. Which, in a case, like my son got in a car accident, heading to Northfield on the ice, he had 1 bar and could text someone. In the case he had, he was able to make a 911 call, but in the case that you can't, you would have expanded 1 bar and you'd at least be able to text on a cell phone. I personally carry a satellite phone. Wherever I go, whether it's up north, that satellite phone. That's my own personal preference. But I was explaining to him the other day when I met with him that Cabela's makes a spot that makes any cell phone work as a satellite phone. It's $200 a year. It attaches to your regular cell phone. I'm not sure if people are aware of this, but it switches your cell phone over to a satellite signal and will go to the sky. And you're allowed 3 calls per month. So I'm not sure if people are aware of that, but that does exist. But I have spoken to the people in the Irving Tower, and they were not against expanding their distances. They had to look into it, but it was more so just on an emergency level. They would not do 4G or phone calls because it wasn't cost effective.
Thank you.
John,
Yes. Patricia?
could I ask that anybody who gets up to speak tries to do their best to be as loud and clear as they can?
Okay.
You want,
Thank you.
you want a microphone?
Do we have one?
Yeah, we can.
I could rig one up pretty quickly if you'd like.
Okay. Well, I don't know if anybody else is speaking. It's been very quiet.
It does seem to be, you're right.
Okay
Well,
then.
I can say why I'm here.
Yes?
Yesterday we got a leaflet in our mailbox, and it was basically about a complaint about the Warwick taxes, saying how they're too high and everything. And which they may be, but I just wanted to come to express my support for the people who work for the town of Warwick on a voluntary basis and do a good job. And also to say that there may be ways that we can economise to bring taxes down, but not to have the Wild West, I think, would not be one of them. So I just wanted to say.
Thank you.
Add your name, please.
Ma'am?
Oh, Anna Bennett. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes, I'll have a motion to approve the
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have to say your name because Patricia's on the phone.
Roll call vote.
Lemon abstains, not having been there. Can you hear me?
Patricia's abstaining.
Yes.
Yes, Patricia abstains.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Don, Maggie, aye. Nick? You have to say your name.
Aye.
Thank you. Do we have any special special municipal employee designations?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'd like you to grant a Chapter 268, Section 20D exemption to Slater Alden, who's been working as an intern and has also turned 18 and would therefore be compensated as a firefighter. So this is law that allows municipalities under 5,000 to permit somebody to be paid for more than one job. The other one is Carrie Cook, who assists with broadband billing and occasionally works at the library. And somebody suggested to me that that one may not have been done, so just to keep people out of trouble. She's a school employee, sometimes works with a substitute librarian. So those are the two. The positions are already special municipal employees, exemptions or whatever.
I move that we grant Terry, sorry, I'm losing it, Slater Alden and Terry Cook, Section 20D exemption, Chapter 268, Section 20D exception.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Lemon, aye.
Oh yeah, roll call, guys.
Say your name.
Arden.
I, Nicholas R. Beanback.
Okay. Broadband and fiber to the home.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Execute pothole grant.
Looking for motion, second, and passage allowing the chairman to sign for this $34,147 contract.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Lemon, aye.
Don Maggie, aye.
Nick R. Beanback, aye.
Broadband and fiber to the home. Yes, Tom?
Let me give an update. The Warwick Broadband Committee is having a meeting tomorrow night, an informational meeting right here at 6 o'clock. It will focus on the Wired West proposal, and we will attempt to answer all the questions. I know there's a lot of concern about Wired West. There's also, we've seen a lot of support for it. A number of people have signed up, and we are getting, we are working towards getting our goal of 40% sign up, which makes it financially feasible for the town to, well, makes it possible for us to sign up for Wired West. I can't think of anything else. Is there anything else you guys have to add?
No, I'd say the executive board of Wired West is moving forward with MBI, and things are coming along as far as the plan to execute. We're working on driveway issues, a few other things, but it's moving right along.
I should say that we are also waiting on some financial numbers, which, if anything, will bring down the total cost, because our assessor and town coordinator went through the information that we got from the state, from MBI, as to how many premises we had in town, and when they were looked over carefully, we found that there were a number that did not exist. They were old outhouses, roads that were no longer serviced. So we reduced our total premise count by approximately 25%, which should reduce how much we need to come up with. It will also reduce how much we get from the state, but it should still be a positive effect. But as we get more numbers, we will be supplying them. We do have a member of the executive committee for Wired West coming tomorrow, and I encourage everybody to come. There will be refreshments.
Thank you. Nick, you had a question with respect to David?
I've posed the question. I was hoping that what this was that somebody who's come up with an answer. Would you like me to pose the question again, or?
The question,
Go ahead.
the question I believe was that if property values go up, as might happen with having high-speed internet service all over town, the question would be, that I think you posed was, would the state aid go down?
Correct, because a lot of state aid depends on how wealthy you are, and if we're more wealthy, perhaps we get less money. There's no great advantage to our property values going up unless we intend to go away. And there are disadvantages for our children because they end up having something that they have to split up and sell if it's too expensive. So I would like to look at all of the angles here, and in particular, the question of state aid. And I hope somebody will come up with an answer.
Well, I can come up with my own answer. Whether that's good enough, I don't know. With broadband available, I think we stand a better chance of having the town become more viable as far as the younger generation is concerned. A lot of people don't want to work or live in a place without it. And, you know, if property values go up because people are buying homes, that means there's more taxes coming in. There are a lot of reasons to want the town to grow as opposed to shrink. And I'm not quite sure why. I guess in my life, I've never decided not to work so I could stay on welfare. I would just as soon move forward rather than worry about whether I'm making money or not from the state dole.
Okay. You understand, by the way, that your statement about more taxpayers means lower taxes is dead wrong. That's been studied to death all around the country, and it's dead wrong.
I'm not sure I said that. I said that more taxpayers would mean that we would have more tax revenue. So
Right,
the
but
state aid wouldn't be as
implication is we're then
important.
going to be able to lower taxes, and that's dead wrong.
But I did not say that.
No, he didn't say
Okay.
I'm not arguing that taxes would go down. I'm saying that we would have more money available to the town.
That's true.
that. Yes, Mr. Ruggiero.
In reference to the fact that what he brought up about, and I see it in my own grandkids, everything is wireless and they have their iPads and all that other stuff I don't know nothing about. And it's all wireless and they're walking around the city and town and everything to use it. I don't see how fiber optics is gonna help that, and we can't even get cell service. Everything is wireless and I'm just really confused on where fiber optics are gonna help everything that these kids have that is wireless. Explain it to me.
Yes, David.
Well, a normal cell tower is, you connect to it from your handset wirelessly, and then it's going to wires. It's actually going to glass fiber, and
I
that's
understand
the
that.
way. So that's how fiber helps. So when I have Wi-Fi at my house right now, it's wireless to the tower, and then it's fiber. The more fiber you can get into the system, the faster and more reliable it's going to be. It's like a chain is as strong as its weakest link, and the fiber is the strongest form of connectivity that we know.
And I think if you have houses that don't have a good connection, they're not going to have good wireless, and then you're kids aren't gonna be able to connect to it, or at least not with any kind of stability.
Yes, sir.
Just look at the group of people in here.
Would
They're
you
all
state
old.
your name, sir?
I'm Vernon Bass, and you look at the age of these people, and they're old. You think they all need that Wired West stuff? You're not gonna get people to come in here because the tax is gonna be too high to live here.
I can't answer for other people.
Well, look at them.
Hi, my name is Carol Taylor. We've been in town about 8 years now. For us, it's kind of important to be able to access that stuff. I have kids, so I would be one of the younger people in the room, that there are reasons why we need those things. You know, access, if you have that fiber optics, you have access to so many different things. All that wireless stuff just reads to your fiber optics. And so it's important as a town that we continue to move forward. Otherwise, people are not going to be moving into town. The town itself is just going to die.
Yes?
Mom of one of the teenagers sitting here who goes into our yard on his wireless device and walks around. If my kids move away from Warwick, which I imagine one or two or three of them might, I would hate to see them leave because this is an old-fashioned town that is beautiful and scenic but has no future for them. If they leave because the bigger world is more interesting, that's fine, but I don't want him to run because he can't access technology, so.
As an old fart, I'd just like to say that 90% of my work depends on some kind of connectivity. And that's why I want it. I mean, I can't work without it.
Yeah.
I agree with everything that these people have to say about having the availability. But 100% of my work is also on the internet. I have HughesNet. I do everything I need on it with no problem whatsoever. Everything that she wants, and he wants. I have no problem with it. I've never had an outage. And I download, upload, I do video conferencing with HughesNet. And I pay a bill my month. I pay $70 a month. And I don't ask the taxpayer for $1. I just don't understand why we should have to ask taxpayers to pay a bill for their connectivity, plus be it on their taxes for 20 years, and possibly being obsolete before you're finished paying it off.
Yes, Tom.
A couple points I want to make is that the Wired West plan that's being offered, the basic plan of 25 megabytes, is being offered for $49, which is considerably cheaper than $70. Yes, there is likely to be a short-term tax increase, but the plan is to pay that back. Could I finish?
No, go ahead.
Thank you. The other issue that some people don't know about satellite, and I had satellite for many years, is there's a thing called Fair Access Policy, which is otherwise known as FAP, which is if you do more communication than they allow you to do within a month, they turn you down to a crawl. And I've had that happen a number of times. I also have had satellite take over a month to restore service. So, you know, different people have different experience. I appreciate your sharing yours. I just want to share some of mine.
I want to speak for Warwick Broadband, which has numerous former satellite customers. I'm one, Tom's one, Bill's one. There's a lot of former satellite customers, and I think I speak for all of them to say satellite sucks.
We're a family of four. We had to get.
May I second that, please? We're former satellite customers ourselves.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Wait.
Sorry, Pat.
State your name.
Erica Nygaard, Orange Road. We used to be on HughesNet, and we exceeded our fair access policy frequently with our kids. You just can't operate when you have more than, like, say, 2 people using it and you're trying to stream and stuff. It just doesn't work. And secondly, I'd also like to say that we were calling customer service in
support it, and, we didn't, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
I'm Todd Baxter from Checking. Obviously, there's a lot of pros and cons to this wired west and fiber optic situation, but everybody knows that we're in the 21st century, and the need for the internet is there regardless of how you use it or what device you use to access it. I think the big question here in Warwick is the funding of it. How we're gonna pay for this, the tax rate, how long it's gonna be in place, and how it's going to affect our personal budgets. Simply, we just went through a tax increase here over the last 4 months. And everybody's been affected by it. I've heard it from many concerned citizens. I'm running for selectman for the May election, and I've just been listening to all of the various opinions that everybody has, and they're all very valid. It's just where we are with our tax rate is at a turning point, and it's trying to find where we're going with this, and again, how we're gonna pay for it. I'm sure that the committee has a lot of answers, but when it finally comes to paper to pen, to ink, and writing down a check, and when we're gonna send it into the town, and how much we're going to expend to pay for this. I've heard numbers as much as 1.5 million in the bond, if I'm correct, yes, no? And we may have subscribers that are putting out there $49 to guarantee this 40% that we need up front. But will they remain with this, and will we attract new subscribers? Hopefully that's the case. But again, is how we're going to cover this, and where is our tax rate gonna end up? Nobody wants to be at $25 on valuation. Right now, we're at 18 and change. We're at 21, okay. So we're encroaching on that. And it's very important at town meeting that we hear everything that Tom has to say, our select board and Dave, and make intelligent decisions based upon their information. You know, I would really like to see where we're gonna end up with our tax rate in this next year. Personally, my budget, I'm at a point where am I gonna take from to put into my tax base to afford to pay for my own home? And I would just like to see the select board and the people responsible for this to please continue to consider that all of us as taxpayers are conscientious, but we also need to survive, because we do not have the ability to go to our employers and ask for a raise every time the tax rate goes up. So I feel that it's imperative that we find ways to fund our budget and fund the extras, but also be able to afford it. Thank you.
Yes, Jim.
John Bradford, Hastings Heights. Just like to reiterate that Wired West has, from the start, said and fully intends to try to make all the towns whole, so that there would not actually be any cost to the town. That is with provisos, because if the business does fail, then there's an issue. But there have been 5 models that have been done, 4 by the state and 1 by Wired West, all of which show that at 40%, this is actually a money-making proposition for whoever ends up running it, and that there will be funds that will allow them to either reimburse or make payments for all the towns. It's a complicated situation. It's not a guarantee, and it is a risk, but the concept was not to make the towns pay for it out of pocket, ever in Wired West.
One of the things that was concerning to me at the start of considering the Wired West proposition was the fact that it is a case where we're all in the soup together. All the member towns are in the soup together. The business makes it or breaks it together, and is not dependent on the performance within any individual town. Because I've been highly optimistic that it could work in Warwick because of our experience with Warwick Broadband. We have 53% of our residents subscribe to Warwick Broadband. If we get that kind of participation on the fiber, that says it's going to work. On the other hand, being in the soup with everybody else is beneficial to us, because when I run the numbers, the sheer low population in Warwick, there isn't enough money at $50 a head to pay the debt service coming from Warwick. The bottom line is, the whole Wired West project is subsidizing towns like Warwick. It's places with higher population density that are still unserved and want to join with us. But
Yay, Shutesbury.
so part of my analysis says, I really think this can work in Warwick with 53% and growing adoption by Warwick residents for a far inferior product. To be able to get, for the same money, so much more. But the fact of the matter is, we will be in it with multiple other towns, and we'll need to have this 40% average adoption rate in order for the numbers to work. And the more we get, the better and better it gets. Warwick Broadband, as of last June 30th, has $36,000 profit. Paid all its bills. Never cost the taxpayer anything.
What happens at 40% is you break even so that you can pay a penny a year on the...
No, you break even at 35.
I'm sorry?
You break even at 35.
And at 40, you can pay back to the town's what amount?
Well, we don't,
Over time, all of it.
the concept
Shape of
is
it may not
that
be nice.
every town will get reimbursed for their outlay. But
Quickly. By the end of the next century or by the end of the next week?
In between.
Thank you. I think we need a more clear,
We don't have exact numbers.
that
Best
number
case to
has to
me
be
looks
known.
3 to 5 years. I don't want to speculate on the worst case.
Has anybody speculated on it? Has any work been done on that?
Well, I'm certain that Wired West has done that research. I mean, tomorrow will be a perfect opportunity to ask the representatives that same question. You know, there's 32 towns and tens of thousands of people that are all going in toward this collectively. So a question of that caliber, I'm certain, has been asked.
and the state has been
Well,
looking into it.
then somebody must have an answer to it.
Yeah, and again, tomorrow I would imagine tomorrow with the Wired West executive committee member there would be a perfect opportunity to ask that question.
What time's that meeting?
6
6
o'clock.
o'clock.
I would encourage everyone who has any questions about Wired West to come tomorrow. They gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago, and those people really understand the latest developments in Wired West. Our committee keeps up, but these people are right on the line. So you will get expert answers and the most recent knowledge they have about what's happening. So please come tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Yes, Jim?
One gentleman's concern was the longevity of this technology as being cutting edge. Does anybody want to speak to that? Someone was concerned about becoming obsolete, and is there a way to envision, to look forward on that?
Fiber optic cable has been around for a long time, and there are places where it is functioning, where it has functioned for 45 years. So it's not a newfangled technology. What does change is the electronics, which goes at either end. And the way the Wired West plan is set up is that those are replaced, I think it's every 7 years. So that as technology improves, it can be more efficient. But the pipe that it comes through, and I think it's important to think about it as a pipe. It's not a little wire in terms of what can go through it, remains the same.
That's really helpful information about what he was concerned about. Was it becoming obsolete? Is there any way of envisioning? I know we can't say what the future is, but there's a way to address that. Anybody?
I think there would be a good answer to that tomorrow.
Did you have something, John?
Well, I would just say that any technology becomes obsolete. The things that keep technology in the running are how much of it has been distributed and how many people are relying on that infrastructure. And I would say, if you look at the US right now, fiber is a major piece of the infrastructure. So essentially, there's going to be a lot of momentum to that. I mean, people are not going to want to spend tons of money because another technology came along. They ain't gonna wanna rip out all the fiber, so the fiber will be around for a long time. I mean, it's a big cost outlay, a lot of companies are committed to it, and I don't see it going away really quickly. I mean, look how long copper lasts. And it's been ridiculous for 20, 30 years now.
Probably outlived most of us.
Yes,
The
John?
difficulty is that,
I know.
okay, if I may speak,
I'd just like to see the select board take a minute and think about what Vern said. You know, half the town is on a fixed income. I'm on a fixed income. The government says you can't work, they won't let you work. What are you gonna do? You can't do nothing, but we don't have extra money for this stuff. I mean, it's getting ridiculous. The tax rate in this town for your services rendered is ludicrous. You know what I mean? It's just not right. You know, most towns have services, we don't have any. We don't have any water, we don't have any sewer. We get the roads, the volunteer fire department for the most part. You know, electric policing, we do have that. But I think the select board needs to think about the population. How many people can afford it, how many people can't?
I am also on fixed income. I think about it all the time. The reason I ran for select board was to try to get the taxes down. But when you get here, you find out things that weren't obvious when you're on the outside. Emergencies come up, equipment has to be replaced. Do you wait too long, or do you take advantage of a bargain right now? It's gonna up our budget a little more. And those are
understand what
things
you're
that
saying.
happen that,
But John's bet on your side too, John.
yeah.
And it's a very serious consideration for him, too, you know, I mean, as a citizen and as a former select board. So he knows both sides of the fence,
Yes,
and all he's asking is that you consider it,
we do.
you know,
But the budget is voted
and
by
to listen to the people.
the budget is voted by the town. So if you have questions or opposition to what is in the budget, you need to come to the town meeting and vote on it. That's how the budget gets passed. That's what happened last year. A lot of you didn't come to the town meeting, and so people voted differently than you feel. Had you been here, things might have been different and the tax rate might not have increased. Every person's vote is important, and I think we've learned that now. Yes, David?
Steve mentioned he was a former selectman. I was wondering what years those were. What years were you a selectman?
99 to 2002 beginning. I believe it was.
Okay, well,
And
the
John was,
what years were you, John?
I don't remember what years it was.
Well, I just wanted,
2001 to 2006.
2001 to 2006. Well, in the past 13 years, the highest tax rate we had was while John was a selectman, was $20.74 in 2005. In 2003, the year after you became a selectman, the tax rate was $20.45. And between those 2 years, it was $20.04. So our tax rate is not even in recent history as high. If you want to talk about tax rates, you know what I think about talking about tax rates. But the tax rates were higher in those 3 years. Fact. And you guys were the selectmen then.
What was the revenue base that they had then?
What was the revenue base? Let's see, equalized valuation times the tax rate.
The population made up too.
Well, the reason, Madam Chairman, for that bit of sophistry was that if we have a point to make, we can look around and find the data to support almost anything. But the point that I really want to make is that people need to remember that none of us got here totally by our own efforts. We all stood on somebody else's shoulders to get here. And the fact I don't have any kids doesn't mean that I don't support school. And the fact that your grandkids may be through the school systems, we've got a job to do here. It's difficult. We need to work through it. But anybody who tells you that the answer is simple, that the taxes are too high and we just have to cut, is out to lunch, in my opinion.
Yes, Tom?
Yeah, I again want to encourage people to come tomorrow. I'm really glad people are here tonight, but we'll be able to have more answers. And one of the things that I keep hearing is that, is about Wired West costing more, and that people on fixed incomes are gonna have a problem paying for that. When in fact, at the last meeting, we had several people come up to us and say, I'm gonna save money.
Yes, Claudia?
So I have a question for David. Last year, when our internet got bumped up faster so we could do live webcam streaming, how much more would that cost if we were to choose that option? You know, if we want to have, with the given system, the broadband, or if we jump over to HughesNet, would it be possible to live stream at those speeds?
You can't live stream at your house?
But I couldn't do the web, it was the webcam that was trained on our yard, on the pigs, and streaming to another website, like a Dropcam or something, GoPro or something, one of those fancy cameras. So I'm just wondering if with the current technology, how expensive would it be for me to stream at the speeds I would need to like, on a regular basis, conference with doctors or something? Is it possible to do that?
It depends on the location of the customer site. At this point, we have 2 tiers of service. We got rid of the $135 library class, and it's either $30 for what was 3 or 4 years ago, the $50 worth of service. And if you pay $50, you're getting our best effort that we can at your site. Not all sites are equal. Not all sites get the faster radio spectrum. But Claudia, you're in a pretty good site, and I would suggest you get a new router if you're having trouble streaming.
So if there was Wired West, would I see a difference?
Yeah, you would see a difference immediately of about, at your site, at about 3 times faster.
Okay, so it
At
would be
Jim and
faster.
Sue's, you'd see an increase of about 10 times faster.
So 3 times or 10 times faster for at the most $50 a month, $49 a month. So my question kind of, not my question, the comment ties into, you know, we saw Ralph get the award or the golden something at the beginning because he's an old fellow in town. And then we had a couple of comments about the rescue in the woods and the need for 911 response and good safety response. I also think of it from the point of view of, you know, I'm 43, I've had 3 open heart surgeries. I'll have another one in like 5, maybe if I'm lucky, 10 years. I used to live near Springfield, so it's easy to get, you know, like we go like that to the doctor. So my doctors now are in Boston, they're specialists. I'd like to be able to afford, you know, to like communicate with them remotely. I don't think Zach wants to worry constantly about how I'm feeling and putting me in the car and driving to Boston. If I could teleconference with like a team of doctors for $50 a month, I think that's a pretty good deal too, so, anyway.
Yes.
If the Wild West, Paul Robbins, if the Wild West becomes viable here in town, for the, I think it's 40% or whatever that figure was, what happens to the Warwick Broadband? Does that go away?
I'm so happy that's not my decision. But it would be my recommendation, or that at least it gets pared back. I can envision the value for keeping it running, and because it's wireless, it doesn't require participation rate. When you've got a base station on a tower, and it goes by 16 houses and only gets a customer every once in a while, it's far more affordable than any wired solution where it's seriously costly to go buy your house if you're not a customer and you keep on going on to find the next one. So it could be backup, it could be reserved. Frankly, there are many places that we could serve out of town. We do some, but that hasn't been explored. Town might choose to keep it as a revenue generating entity and one to provide service where, say, somebody might not be able to afford to extend the wired west is only going to go so far up a driveway. And if your driveway is a mile long, you're going to have a check to write or payments to make. So maybe that customer would want to stay on. And maybe by using pricing structures, the selectmen could decide to ease people over. If it's $50 for 4 mags on Warwick Broadband and it's $50 for 25 on Wired West, I got a bridge to sell you. You want to buy Warwick Broadband, sir?
Can I ask a quick technical question?
Yes.
Can you explain to me the difference between a T4 cable and wired lines?
I know T1s and T3s. I never heard of a T4. But I got to think it's
Because I can do a T4 cable, $4,500 coming off of Route 280, right to that campground with unlimited bandwidth. I don't feel that an elderly person, I use incredible bandwidth. I get paid Visa cards all day long. No one uses more bandwidth than me. My thing is, I don't feel that an older person should have to pay taxes for something that they don't want. And in that case, if I needed faster, I would put in a T4 cable going straight to 2A. Solely mine, unlimited bandwidth, many users as I want. Then the next discussion is, I use HughesNet all day long. I've never gone down, I don't understand, I have webcams, I have security cams. I've never gone without bandwidth. There's a little monitor on my computer that tells me what I'm using when. And if I want more, I call them and say, might need more, not sure, panicking. Our date ends on the 15th. For $10, they add another 50 megabytes. But, you know, the older people don't have to pay for what I'm using for bandwidth.
Madam Moderator.
I just used my phone to ask it about T4s, and Yahoo Answers says there is no such thing as a T4.
Then it's a T3.
T1, yes. T3, yes, but there is no T4.
That's T3.
Actually, there is a
I stand
T4.
corrected, it's a T3. But you show me unlimited bandwidth with your Wired West. To 1,500 people on a holiday weekend, you show me unlimited bandwidth, and I don't have to pay. If I'm gonna pay that amount, I'm coming from 2A. You're telling me I gotta pay to come up my 1,200-foot driveway.
Tom, how much is the pricing on bigger buys on Wired West's provisional rate sheet? They got 100.
A gigabyte is 109, and there's something in between.
A gigabyte is multiple T3s.
100 megabytes super fast internet for $79 a month, and then a gigabyte is 109.
Like I said, what are you guys downloading? I do a whole business. 1,500 people on a holiday weekend, I'm not even close to that user. What the heck are you downloading?
I don't know, I mean, Bill Football Road, I mean, we tried satellite a number of times, and we're a family of 5, and we would max out in 48 hours consistently. You know, I mean, we all carry phones, we have multiple devices on, you know, I connect 24 hours a day with my IT job at a bank in Vermont, and we tried, I mean, you know, to your point, Steve, I mean, satellite worked good for us, you know, the installer was great, he came up, he put the dish up, clear signal, just like we do with the television service. So getting it all set up was great, but we couldn't go a solid week without losing and getting throttled back consistently every time. And I think the other point for us is that, you know, it's more than internet. You know, these guys are, the fiber to the home is offering for us data, phone, and potentially cable television. When I total up what we're paying a month for all three of those, we're over $200 a month. For our landline telephone, which works about 60% of the time, our DirecTV and our current internet connection, you know, they're offering $50 internet, $20 additional for a digital phone, and $120, $130 a month for the full suite, including cable. That's, you know, that's $70, $80 a month back in my pocket if I do all three. And like I said, we ended up putting a femcell tower on our Warwick Broadband, because our home phone goes out, our copper line is so unreliable that we're constantly using our cell phone off our internet, because we can't rely on our landline, but we're still paying $60 a month for it. Florida. We probably have phone service about 60% of the time.
Can you cut down trees or not cut down trees?
Oh, it's copper, our landline phone. So this offers us internet, digital phone, and cable, you know, and we could be talking $800, $1,200 a year in savings. That's an enormous amount back in my budget.
I see your point in that you are saving on the phone and everything is bundled package. You can't get Comcast out of your woods. But you look at the cost of coming up the driveway, they're not gonna maintain it, it's gonna raise your taxes. You gotta look at this side, you gotta look at this side.
What do you mean they're not gonna maintain it?
I was told in the last meeting that they're gonna cover up to 150 feet coming up my driveway, from then on in, it's my responsibility.
That's incorrect information. It hasn't been decided what it is, but the minimum was 300, and they're thinking about extending that.
So it's all an if. You know, you're kind
Well,
of.
isn't everything?
It's ifs. Big ifs.
Yes, ma'am.
Carol Taylor again. I would like to say it would be wonderful to pick up my landline and have a dial tone every single time. And I live here in the center of town. So of course, usually my phone is up, but you can call up to the school and it rings busy, and you know that that's not really the case, that they're in there, they're in the school, and it just is the phone, it's the old copper lines. To have, even if you only did the phone, to have a phone and know that you can pick it up and use it if you need to in an emergency or anything else would be worth the money to me. I don't know about anybody else, but getting onto the emergency stuff, when I pick up my landline and there's nothing there. You know, okay, so I'm in the center of town, I might be able to find somebody, but if you live not in the center and you have the same issues, and I know at least one other family, every time it rains, they lose their landline. And the fiber optics would take care of that issue that we have just with something as simple as a landline.
I was just gonna say the same as Carol, and we were just talking about the meeting, talking about the importance of communication in the town. And at the last Wired West meeting, they were saying about how old the copper lines, the phone lines are in town. That, you know, aside from the internet, just investing in fiber on the basis that we need to think about what we're gonna do with the phones in town. And, I mean, nobody's gonna come to Warwick and replace, you know, phone lines because it's too expensive. And we, you know, what happens if you don't have cell phones, you don't have phones maybe potentially in the future, you know? Is that really the good way to go? You know, we need to invest in the future technologies and, you know?
Yes, ma'am.
We're at Crane. I want to say I agree. We're at the top of Hastings Heights Road, and we spend $80 a month for our Verizon phone plan. And if it rains, we don't have a phone. And that's huge. And we have a sight line to Mount Grace, and sometimes my cell phone does not work. So that means we're completely without communication.
Yes.
I think please don't probably answer that. Will the fiber optics supersede Verizon's wire lines? In other words, they still have to, and the calls still have to go over those Verizon copper wire lines?
No.
So Verizon will then string fiber optic line? Just
It won't
explain
matter.
how it works.
Well, the way it would work is it's voice over IP, and
So
the fiber line that you are connected to will then take the call back to, what would you call it? the place where it would be distributed to other, out to the other phone lines.
Your phone is still gonna be Verizon, am I correct?
No,
No,
could be.
You're gonna have to get another phone. Then.
This is an internet phone here. You plug this phone into a phone jack in your house, it will not work. This is an IP phone. They make gadgets that'll translate between using your old legacy phone, that's a plain old telephone line, and that you could plug that into this Cisco or other device that costs $90 and plug it into a fiber line.
No, I understand that.
Verizon's in for a lot of competition. Your question's kind of funny to me because I switched a number of town hall lines to fiber. It cut the cost per line to $12.95 per line, and each line's good for 3 calls out. If you call me from 544, it still rings on the old copper wire to the old telephone that I got a final bill for a month or more ago, that I shut down the long distance, told them turn off the voice cloud-based answering service. I can't make them go away. They aren't getting paid. If you call from anywhere else in the country, it's going to this fiber service. There's some things for Verizon to work on. I think my latest theory is it has something to do with the changes that were made in the 1980s to make all of Franklin County toll-free call to the 544 Orange, and that they just haven't got something figured out. But there's competition for Verizon, but my understanding is that Wired West is going to be an open system, so not only could you buy Wired West telephone package across this internet connection, you could put Vonage on it, you could put a Magic Jack on it, or if Verizon comes out with a product that says, you know, here's our Verizon telephone, it can ride this cable.
So half of the town could have the fiber optics and have that ability. The other half could still have, because they couldn't afford or didn't want fiber optics, they're still just dealing with Verizon and have those same problems. So it's not a one solution, whereas.
Right, it's not the only thing offered.
Working on, I think, on the cell service is a much more better thing. Because that will serve everybody then, not just a select few.
Yes, sir.
Doc Ryan, Hastings Pond Road. I'm under the impression that as part of the membership in Wild West, that they're going to pay, the state's going to give Warwick a grant of several $100,000 to help build this network.
That's correct.
Is that going to go away if we don't take advantage of this membership right now?
Yes, this is a limited time deal, and we are one of a number of towns in Western Mass that are eligible for this. And if we don't opt to do this in the next year, then it will go away, and we'll be left with whatever we patch together.
Yeah.
So we are getting state money as part of the package.
All right, well, the way I feel about it is that Verizon hasn't invested in our town in decades, it seems like, and that's why everybody has telephone problems. And this gives us the opportunity to receive investment from the state for several $100,000 to improve our overall connectivity and communication abilities. And it seems like a golden opportunity we shouldn't pass up. And I understand that it'll create a tax burden for a short time, but we're talking about improvement of service for a long time into the future that will benefit us a great deal. So I don't see the point of passing up this opportunity, actually.
Thank you. Yes, Claudia?
Telephone question. You had asked if half the town had copper wires and then half the fiber optic. Am I correct, I guess Tom or John, even if you don't sign on for Wired West, the fiber still runs to your pole on your street? So if you just, the whole town will get wired, it'll all be fiber?
There will be fiber to all the poles.
So even if you.
There won't be
decided-
drops to the houses. If a person doesn't take it, then there isn't a drop from the fiber line to the house.
But they could choose to do that in 6 months or a year.
They could.
So if you decided that you really tried your copper, your other neighbors all liked your new service, you could still sign on for the new service. But, and it probably would be, our cell phone bill runs like, I don't know, over $100 a month in order to have cell coverage. It really would be cheaper to have good fiber coverage.
I understand what you're saying, but I think people should look at some of the towns. Kansas has had it for years. And the figure you're giving now to start it off with $49, you're gonna pay another $25 for taxes. Go online and see if you can put yourself in a town in Kansas and see if you can get that for that much now. And they've had it for quite a while, all different rural areas. I think Montana has it, a lot of those Midwest where it was easy to, they rolled it all underground.
Yes, Dave.
North Kansas City, Kansas. Everybody's heard about Kansas City and Google and the fiber. If you follow fiber, you know about Kansas City. City of North Kansas City has free fiber internet for all residences. They only charge the businesses. They just have enough. Well, the city made a deal with a data center that said, if you'll give free service to our residents, you can charge the customers and we'll let you have a data center here. So you can find a place in Kansas where the internet, fiber internet, is free.
Call David.
Anything else? I really hope you come to.
I got a question. I've had my hand up a couple times over here.
I'm
not
sorry.
gonna be able to come tomorrow night, but I would like to ask a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One is, when we go through the bill, if we vote for this, is it per resident or per household that we tax? So if a person owns a rental property and a regular piece of property, we're gonna tax that person times 2?
Property taxes are based on
So
property
if you get
value.
On property value.
If you own 5 houses, you're gonna pay at each house.
Okay, you're gonna pay it 5 times then?
Yeah.
Now, we're gonna run on every street that's a town road? That's correct. I believe.
Unless we have town roads with no houses on them.
Yeah, or sections that don't have houses, it doesn't make sense to go down.
However, to equate Wired West with increased taxes is kind of muddying a complex picture. I mean, they really are guaranteeing that they are going to make towns whole for anything that they have to put out. And the numbers do prove that they should be able to do that. They're models. Models can be wrong, but their intent is not to make the towns bear the burden. We're looking for 40%. We have kind of a break-even point. What percentage are we at with the sign-ups now?
Can you get online, David?
I haven't looked for a while.
Last I
I'd say
looked,
nowhere.
15, I think.
last I looked was 15, that was last week.
Yeah, I think I was on, yesterday it was at 16.
Okay. There is a backlog, and then all the things that have been mailed in are getting in much slower. That much I know. The ones that are done online happen instantaneously.
Sorry, I just wondered, could the meeting be recorded tomorrow night? I can never come to Tuesday evenings, and I'd really like to hear it.
Yes,
I volunteer if you'd allow me to.
That would be wonderful.
thank you.
That would be great.
Sure.
Really helpful to put it up on.
Thanks. Okay,
Excuse me,
yes.
you say the cost of this right now for the introductory type of sign up is $50. Okay, and you said the payback at best is 5 to 7 years, which is something from a business standpoint is not a good investment, in my opinion. We don't do anything at my particular place where I work unless the payback's 2 to 3 years. Okay? Okay, now it's $50 to begin with. In 5 or 7 years, if it's all paid for, can you guarantee that the cost to the consumers, townspeople, is still gonna be $50? And if we ever have a winter, like we had, did anybody remember all the power lines down? This cable is yay big, probably holds a lot. Isn't the cable going down the road just like Leverett?
It's like that.
It's that big, okay. I was just worried about, we're worried about the phones being out there, and this cable being out there. Who's gonna pay for that, and if it's an excessive winter, is there gonna be force majeures put on our bills and so on and so forth, do we have to pay extra, so on and so forth? And can you guarantee that that's gonna be $50 in 5 or 7 years as our normal bill for basic service? Is there a cap on the contract that we sign with these people?
I'm not quite sure what you meant about payback.
When you do a project, there's always a payback time.
Right.
When you regain your initial capital investment.
Right.
He's saying at best it's 5 to 7 years that this thing's gonna be paid for.
Well,
If
the
I
project
could,
may take.
There was one, I said 3 to 5 years. I'm pretty
Okay,
sure.
fine, 3 to 5.
3 to
I
5.
thought it was 5 to 7 at best.
At best case,
I heard 5.
a couple other points. It was brought up at the last meeting about fiber cables in Leverett being 2 feet off the ground. I've checked with a number of people, that is not the case. They are between the phone lines and the electric lines. I don't doubt that you saw it, but I think that was in the process of installation, because Leverett is being wired right now. There's a couple other points.
To address the cost and the
Okay,
increases.
the $49 is not an introductory price. That's an ongoing price. I can't guarantee for all eternity. That is the price, they have it in the model. They are extremely concerned about coming back to towns. They do not want to come back to towns. And they are making sure that there is enough, you can call it padding, but what's the more technical term for that?
Reserve.
Contingency, reserve, so that they do not have to come back to town, because they know that that's politically suicide, and taxpayers are gonna revolt. And so we don't wanna do that. You know, the Wired West doesn't wanna do that. Were there other points? I can't remember.
Well, and the, I mean, the financing model is complicated, you know. I mean, I think we're trying to give the information that we have, and talking with these guys, like at the forum tomorrow night, is really important, because they really can take it much further than we can. The way that we've understood it is that the town will be on the hook for the first 3 or 4 years of financing while they're standing the system up, because the wiring of, you know, stringing the fiber and getting everything out there and the infrastructure out there is the most expensive and time-consuming part of it. And then once everything's up and they can light the network up, getting the backhaul and feeding the system itself is much, much less effort. And at that point, when the system's lit up and everyone's live, that's when all the revenue's coming in from all the separate towns. When all that revenue's pooling in year 4, perhaps as far out as year 5, that's when their projections are saying they're gonna be bringing enough revenue from all the residents in all 32 towns to be able to collectively write a check back to each town, and the system should be self-sustaining and not have to cost tax revenue back to the individual towns. That's what their financial models are predicting. But for the first 3 or 4 years during the construction phases, there's not gonna be anywhere near enough revenue to be self-sustaining, and that's when the towns are gonna be on their own. But after the system's lit up and going, that's when it's gonna be self-sustaining, is the way that they describe describe it. But I do a terrible job of explaining it. These guys are much better at it. As I said, I really hope one of you guys can make it tomorrow, because these guys are good and they really have the information.
I'm just concerned about everybody that's involved in this, and everybody cancels out all their phones and all the different other forms of communication. Then Wired West says, oh, we got you now. Then their bills go up and up and up, and there's no cap.
Well, Wired West is a cooperative of all the towns. We all have representatives as part of that cooperative. So there is nothing that's going to get done without it being passed through the cooperative. And I don't think you're going to find the other towns, people are any more likely to want to jack prices up than we are.
Why isn't other towns doing this?
There are.
Well,
There are.
I mean, why aren't they doing it, some other town, and then selling it to us?
What do you mean?
Outside of Wired West.
Outside of Wired
I
West.
think you can use Leverett as an example where, they've done it as a single town and been successful doing it, but they're bearing the entire burden on themselves. So I don't know what their end financial model is, but their cost is definitely in the 7 figures to go out and do just what we were talking about, identify all the households, run all the fiber, string it home, and get everybody live. And by the time that cost came in, they're bringing the revenue back and then throwing that against whatever the final, the final cost was, but it's huge, So I think a given town might be able to service a number of other towns, but it's a big business model. I think it seems like it can only work in a big collective, cooperative arrangement like these guys are doing with a $50 million check from the state of Massachusetts. That's the other part of it.
Did they give you an idea of how long to install it?
The construction phase?
Yeah.
It's expected to go out about 4 years.
Yeah, the best case is the end of the second year, which the years start in 2016. At the end of the second year, some towns would
People
start
will
to be
start
lit up.
coming online.
But some, would be the following year. One advantage that Warwick does have because of Warwick Broadband is that there is some money that can help us with the first couple of years from the revenue, the surplus in Warwick Broadband, so that it reduces or eliminates a tax hit in the first couple of years.
And that's the enterprise.
That's the enterprise. It is up to the town or the select board to decide whether they want to do that, but it's legal for us to do it. We got that confirmed.
It's also probably worth noting that for the first 5 years, it would be financed under a bond anticipation note, which actually would be at a 0.5% interest rate currently, which is a really good, the cost would be low in the beginning. Another thing about the bond anticipation note is that the interest doesn't become due on it until after the first year. So that pushes it out some. In the first year, you're only paying interest, you're not paying principal on it. So that keeps the cost down as well. So for the first couple of years, it's entirely likely that Warwick Broadband, if the town were to decide to do that, could cover most, if not all of it. But it's unclear,
Okay. David, did you have a question?
I withdraw.
Okay. Solid waste, transfer station, enterprise fund budget.
The commissioners met at 5 o'clock today, and they asked the select board to act on a budget request of $34,860, and will also, to support FY16, we just got a certified free cash for solid waste number, which is $5,768. We also have that appropriated for the operation. The taxpayer hit for solid waste enterprise fund in FY12 was $12,000, FY13 was $6,400, FY14 was $3,300. This current year was $0, and next year is $0. We've achieved operations out of revenue. motion and second to approve the FY16 enterprise fund budget and place it on the town meeting warrant.
So moved.
She lives.
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion?
Not here.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Lemon, aye.
Don Maggie, aye.
Nick Argy, aye.
Okay. Unfunded mandates.
The lieutenant governor sent an email blast around last week with a little survey asking about unfunded mandates. And if you go to the town's website, in my most recent coordinator report, there's a link you can click on. And I think that it would be good if others would answer this. What I said is we need Chapter 70 funding to grow. Chapter 70 is school aid. It's gotten to the point where a 1% school budget increase becomes a 2% assessment increase to the town because the portion of school funding that comes from state aid isn't growing. I went on to say we need transportation funding for busing restored to levels called for in the law. We need continued Chapter 90, that's our highway grant, at the $300 million statewide so we can address our highway needs. We need our payment in lieu of taxes to grow since we host so much state land. I can't see the harm if 40, 50, 60 Warwick residents followed that link and answered the survey. So I would invite folks to do that.
Thank you.
David, what's the survey again?
It's
From who?
the Lieutenant Governor's office. Massachusetts Lieutenant Governor Healy sent out this email blast. If you email me, I'll forward it to you, or you can go to the town website and find the link. 4 questions. It was one of the least painful online surveys I've taken.
David, why don't you forward it to the L?
Sure. Good idea. Yeah, question.
Yes.
What is our current payment for the town in the pilot program? What was it for this last year?
About 112,000.
Any idea if there is a so-called value for the state land, what that is for the town?
It absolutely exists. I don't know it off the top of my hand. What I do know is that, and I don't like to go to the State House and say thank you. I like to say we need more. But
that's why I'm asking.
well,
Obviously, it's
what I want to tell you is the underlying truth is that the state pays us more in lieu of taxes on an acre of land than a private landowner with the land in Chapter 61. So the state actually, we derive, and in neither case is it much money, but the state actually pays us more than land that's in the forestry reduced tax program. The state's coming to the plate with more money. The only reason we haven't taken it in the teeth and had that number come down is that there are some communities in eastern Mass who have what is, for them, a fair amount of state land. It's not 50% of their land mass, but if you're Plymouth and you got the Cape Cod Canal going through there, we've got some partners in the state who've kept the state's attempt to cut this over the years pretty much off the table.
This pipeline, do we have need of additional legal defense funding?
I'm here as Mr. Cady's proxy. Tonight, the Pipeline Advisory Committee is also meeting, so neither Mr. Brodsky or Mr. Cady would be here. There is a growing consensus among towns who, I think all towns are pretty much opposing the pipeline, that towns need to brace themselves for a possible legal fight. So what needs to be considered is whether the $5,000 a year that we appropriate for legal defense is an adequate number. Should we possibly increase the reserve fund? Should we increase that line? Do we make the judgment that our level of funding is adequate?
And we'll get information from them to decide.
I'll throw it into the cauldron.
And does it make sense to increase the reserve fund for this contingency?
Same question, we could put more money in the, what we've tried to do over the past years is keep contingency out of everybody's budget and put money into the reserve fund, which the Finance Committee oversees and is for unintended expenditures. I could, with a straight face, argue that going to court with Tennessee Gas Pipeline Company is unintended. We certainly wouldn't look forward to it. It would be really expensive, and we don't anticipate doing so. But there's folks thinking ahead and thinking maybe we need to begin to stock up.
It seemed to me that we needed a number from Ted. He was saying we should put some money in the reserve fund or in the legal budget. It doesn't say anything about how much. So I didn't know quite what to do with it. I agree there ought to be something, but if there's a request, it needs to specify for it.
All right, well, I think he was putting the, I don't think he's got a number in mind. And this could be one of those things that no number could ever be big enough if you were sufficiently opposed to the pipeline and willing to take it as far as you could take it. So it's really more of a political question than it is a technical question, I think, in terms of coming up with that number. Personally, I'd take our chances and deal with it when the day comes. We do fund our legal line to $5,000 a year, which means that we won't be. The argument that I heard for this years ago was you don't want to get sued and not have the money to answer the suit in the 10 days you have, or whatever, or worse, have me answering it.
Do we have any correspondence?
Well, we don't have the correspondence file folder, so I'd say no.
Do you have anything to add to the coordinator report?
Do you want to get the selectmen report first?
Do you have anything to report, Patricia?
Not a thing.
Nick?
Minor item on the coordinator report. I think there's a arithmetic error in your last line. Namely, that we are short on the state's suggested stabilization funds by 22K, not 12K.
I'm agreeing.
And because of that, I think we should consider budgeting an increase in the stabilization funds. I don't think the stabilization funds work as well as they ought in town, and part of it is the insufficiency in the number.
Well, any appropriation would be an increase over last year.
I'm sorry?
$1 appropriation would be an increase over last year. Last year we appropriated nothing to capital stabilization. My model has us budgeting $25,000.
As you're budgeting, us budgeting
$25,000.
That seems reasonable. Yeah. I don't have anything else.
David, do you have anything to add?
Well, I just want to remind you, remember Seaboard Solar? Remember like 2 years ago, sometime we had a special town meeting? That thing is actually still plodding along, like nowhere near on time schedule. But they reported that they anticipate starting on the Gilbertville Road in West Brookfield project that has our name on it in May. And it's about 2/3 of the 10 megawatt cab. Hope I'm not messing up here. Potential to generate 35,000 a year to Warwick for the next 20 years. So apparently permitting is going along in good shape, and the rules for the allocation caps to get into the program, when we said yes, the deal was you build it, and then once you're ready to come online, you can make your claim. That rule has changed, because now I see quarterly notices that it's time to file another report in order to safeguard your allocation. So apparently that's changed, and what I do is I follow up with them and make sure that they do keep it alive.
Do we have any new or other business?
Yeah, I got,
On your, you did not do this, discuss the Wired West Town Meeting article motion, and according to Mass General Law, Chapter 54, Section 42C, notwithstanding the provisions of any general or specific law to the contrary establishing a later time, a city or town clerk shall not print on a city or town election ballot any question to the voters for which he receives final written notice after the 35th day before such election. So I checked with Harry and Howard in elections. I have to have this in writing by 5 p.m. on April 13th. Your next meeting starts at 6 p.m. on April 13th. So I think you need to do that. That's what it says.
thank you for that. Good one to know about. I have scheduled a selectmen's meeting for 2 o'clock this Thursday for the sole purpose of considering legal action and possible settlement. And I was ready to just bring it under new and unanticipated, but the Attorney General asked me not to. They want it in executive session because they don't want the terms of settlement out there before they actually have our check. So 2 o'clock Thursday. And Patricia, I'll have to look in to see if it's possible to do executive session by phone. My gut says it's not.
Just let me know.
Okay. And so to meet Rose's noted issue, I'll probably need to call a meeting either earlier or prior to, and I would suggest a special meeting just to deal with election articles, which I can think of possibly two, maybe just this one.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
Some of
Wait, yes,
Sue O'Reilly McCray, is it, if you missed adding something under public comment, is it true that now we can't say we came here to talk about something that hasn't come up yet? Is that true? I mean, I don't understand your whole process, like I came because people said there's a lot going on, people should show up, but I'm somewhat ignorant of the whole process.
the public comment comes at the beginning of the meeting, and
Right.
it's for a short comment on whatever's not on the agenda. If you have something that would merit longer discussion, then we should put it on the agenda.
Okay, and the next meeting before the annual meeting for the town is April 13th?
2
Is that what you
weeks.
just said?
Yes.
2 weeks, okay. So can I request that something be on the agenda at that meeting now? Is this a good time? Okay, so as a town member who's concerned about the schools and understands the complexity of trying to address the schools, I would love to have time at that April meeting for a full briefing from the committees about the budget and the concerns that have been brought up. I wasn't able to be at the meeting at Pioneer, son at the same time. But I know that people are working hard to try to, deal with a complex situation because we're part of a four-part group that's trying to deal with the schools. And, I don't want to get to town meeting and feel like, there hasn't been a way to be engaged in the conversation prior to that. So I would just request we have time to talk about it as a town, prior to town meeting, and that perhaps a select board meeting would be a good time.
She'll have more information.
Okay. Do we have a second? To adjourn?
I forget who made the motion, but I'll second if you need a second.
Patricia made the motion.
Okay.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.